Welcome to another exciting edition of Thunderdome tonight. I'm your host, Immortan Josh. So, another long, emotionally exhausting day here in America. I did see earlier today on Twitter that Ice-T, after like a week of very strident, angry, and self-righteous posts, he actually posted something making a joke out of apparently cocaine being the cause of him losing a lot of money back in the day. So maybe that's a sign that maybe people are finally getting bored of this whole thing and are maybe easing down. I don't know. We'll find out in the morning when all the videos come out from whatever tonight's uproar has been. But the thing I want to address today, the thing that's obviously the thumbnail for this video is about, is the whole fact that Meyer Burnett found himself being canceled over a naughty tweet he did yesterday, which is sad on a lot of different fronts. Right off the bat, I would just like to say Meyer Burnett is like one of the best entertainment YouTubers on the channel, not necessarily in terms of video production or I don't know, he's like maybe not the coolest, the hippest, the youngest, the most topically relevant, but especially from, I guess, what you would call the left-wing YouTube entertainment channels, I find him so much more stomachable than most of the others. I mean, I generally still, even to this day, reluctantly consider myself a part nominally of the left, even though I've largely pulled away from them and all their various insanities for reasons that are rather relevant, I guess, to the Meyer Burnett situation. Oh God, where to begin? So he made a tweet in response to the shooting death of that ex-police chief, Dorn, and he was very upset by it. And he had set out a tweet. I'm not going to try to quote it verbatim. He deleted the damn thing after all. I'm sure someone's archived it somewhere if you really feel like digging through the internet yourself. But it's just one tweet out of thousands upon thousands the guy has made over the years. So we're all emotionally exhausted. We've had months of all this lockdown stuff, the constant stress and worry about what the future is going to be, and then now all the stress and worry about the rioting / protests and all the various permutations of events that might still be coming down the line because of it. America has been going through a big, slow grief phase over the death of our economy, period, I would say, and the whole COVID-19 thing. And all this is just a part of the second phase of that. The grief cycle being you start off with the denial, then you go into anger, and then you finally reach acceptance. Well, we stayed on denial for a long time, and only just in the last week has America seemed to enter the anger phase. And it could have been any number of things which triggered it. I think just by virtue of the fact that you have so many sub-factions of people all participating in these things kind of for their own different ends, using the protests over George Floyd kind of as a cover to, get away with their own little personal agendas. All backs up what I'm saying. There's just this simmering, roiling rage under the surface that I was just looking for something to start frothing over about. And we all need to learn how to forgive each other for our little outbursts during this period of time. Now that we are in the anger phase, hopefully it's imperative for all of us, if we can get ourselves through the anger phase as fast as possible. I mean, we spent 2+ months in denial. We can't afford to stay in anger that long. We got to get it out of our system. And you can't get anger out of your system if you never allow it expression. And so what Meyer Burnett did was fine. Was it the wisest way to phrase things? Probably not. But he shouldn't be having to chastise himself over it. And he shouldn't be, being forced to lose his spot, his longtime spot with the Schmodown stuff and the Schmoes No Network, which I stopped watching Christian Harloff years ago. I mean, as I was going to try to get to saying, so many of the left-wing entertainment YouTubers are so incredibly fake, incredibly disingenuous. Their entire life and their entire gimmick is a virtue signal. And like many of the larger YouTube channels, there always seems to be paywalls behind which, if you ever want to have any sort of interaction or talk to these people, they're expecting you to have the super chats or donate to their Patreon or something like that if you want to be able to have any sort of access to them. Which means that a lot of these channels that say like, oh, we got this great community we're building. Oh, we love our community here at Screen Junkies. Or we love our community here at Collider. Or we love our community here at whatever. That's all bullshit. It's not a community if the only people who are allowed to talk have to pay to fucking talk. And that's why I like Meyer Burnett. He is not a shill. He does raise money. He does accept super chats. And, he has a tip link and all that kind of stuff. But I almost never, ever hear the words pop out of his own mouth encouraging people to donate to him. It's entirely spontaneous. He does have mods that do it for him, and that's really the way to go about it. And on top of that, it's not a paywall. You can still actually get him to like interact with you if by sending him in letters to his website or sending him videos and stuff. He doesn't make you have to give him a couple bucks for the privilege of reading your letter on his daily podcast. And that's great. Very few YouTubers of his stature, and I know he says he's not one of the biggest ones, but he's fuck ton larger than my ass. So, from my point of view, he's a big YouTuber. And I highly respect the fact that he reads my letters as much as I do, as much as he does. So I'm totally like on Meyer Burnett's side. It's ironic, in one of the last letters I had written into him that he read out loud, there was a part where I said something along the lines of how you can't recant your sins enough for the Inquisition because they're still likely to throw you onto the pyre anyway. And lo and behold, the same thing just happened to him days later. There's a reason why it's not wise to apologize to the mob. It's not wise to apologize to the Inquisition. And that's because they're not really out to punish you. So, I mean, you can sign your confession. You can repent for all the terrible things that you did on Twitter. And it doesn't matter. They won't be able to forgive you. They still have to throw you into the fire, because they're not doing it really to punish you, the individual, for having caused the offense. They're doing it to set an example for all the others watching. So make sure that they're all intimidated into toeing the line and not stepping out of bounds and saying the wrong thing. Otherwise, you might get canceled just like RMB. And as far as I'm concerned, as much as I like, if, on paper, if I take one of those political compass tests, it still tells me I'm a far left person. But it's hard for me to kind of even like fathom that, because at least, I mean, I guess it's just a policy kind of thing. But the whole attitude from the left, the hyper moralistic attitude of the left, if they're having to enforce that morality through these sorts of intimidation tactics and by making public examples out of people, is it really moral at all? I would think that if your belief system is sound, you wouldn't have to resort to those sorts of tactics in order to keep people, all boxed in together with it. So, we have to be able to express ourselves, or this isn't going to ever be able to stop. It's just going to drag on and on and on. So, all this stuff about having to, the whole blackout day thing the other day, that's not helpful at all. Shutting a bunch of people up for their skin color, that's racist. We're seeing the manifestation of what has occurred for 20, 30 years now of putting on this belief system around ourselves that no matter what black people do, they can't be racist to white people, and white people are all automatically racist. Like the videos of just people, all the kneeling and all that stuff, that's incredibly dangerous type of shit. And unfortunately, when I see crowds of people kneeling, the first thing that pops into mind is that damn scene from the first Adventures when Loki's in Germany and he's telling everyone to kneel. He's going to take freedom away for their own good and that kind of stuff. And then you have the one guy stand up in the crowd and say, "Oh, no." Well, we don't have that one guy standing up in the crowd to say no. And if that guy did try to stand up in the crowd and say no, he'd get the shit beat out of him. Because unfortunately, we don't live in a world with comic book fucking heroes who are ready to swoop in and save the day like Captain America. We're just left up to the bravery of individuals. And as much as I admire Robert Meyer Burnett, like, I understand why he buckled. I understand why he's taking the attitude he takes. He's a much more diplomatic person than I am. I'm willing to be antagonistic to people. I don't mind it at all. I find it kind of enjoyable, even though it tends to drive people away. But fuck it, I don't need him anyway. But I wish he hadn't had acquiesced to the demands of the crowd. He shouldn't have deleted his tweet. He wasn't like quoting rap lyrics about shooting all N-words or any kind of shit like that. He was just saying that this guy, like, there was no one there to defend this dude who is trying to himself defend a friend of his from getting his store robbed, and that someone should have been there to shoot the kill. So, whatever. It's a sad world. That these are the sorts of things that we have to worry about being damned for. What did he do to, like, not only get kicked off the Schmoes network, but apparently I didn't watch it myself because, like I said, I haven't bothered watching Christian Harloff in a long while. But apparently on Christian Harloff's own stream today, I guess on Collider or whatever he's currently on, they were talking shit about Robert Meyer Burnett. Well, you know, I guess just to flagellate themselves and prove that, like, yeah, no, I screw that guy. I'm totally on your side. It's just a bunch of posturing. It's fake. It's why I don't like them. It's why even though I don't consider myself part of the Fandom Menace, I primarily watch Fandom Menace channels for most of my movie news. The only reason I watch John Campea is because of Robert Meyer Burnett. I remember Robert Meyer Burnett. I'd gotten into him when he and John Schnepp were co-hosting, what was it, that Heroes show where they would talk about just comic book stuff back on Collider, back before John Schnepp passed, R.I.P. But, you know, I'd stopped watching Collider after, like, another rage quit from Campea because I got tired of watching Campea build up these shows, build up these teams, and then quit and leave everyone holding the bag when he just goes off to go start something else. And I think it was because Robert Meyer Burnett had popped up on Midnight's Edge or something is what kind of put him back on my radar. And like, oh, he actually has a channel. And I started, you know, watching him again, getting into it. And several months ago after my mom died, I started making a point of writing in because there's something about watching his channel, especially when he was ragging on the modern Star Treks and stuff, that reminded me of, you know, the days of having really long, elaborate conversations / arguments with my mom about Star Trek. And I've kind of missed that in my life. So I feel like that's somehow satisfied by just listening in on him. And so I got encouraged by one of his moderators to start writing letters, and he seems to take to most of them. The only times he won't read something I write in is if I'm probably pushing a little too much into edgy territory with some of the stuff I'm saying. So as long as I dial it back a little bit, I know I can get some amount of interaction, and I've actually gotten a good amount of channel growth because of that over the last few intervening months. The idea that he's some sort of virulent white supremacist, racist, advocating violence is the most ridiculous bullshit in the world. No one who knows him could possibly believe that. And so the people over there at the Collider and Schmoes who've just thrown him under the bus. Once again, you know, if you're scared of your own side, why are you on that side? You don't have to become a Republican by leaving the left. You can be a renegade agent like I am. But it's time for a lot of people to just wake up, and that, like, it's time to get out of the Matrix, Neo, kind of a thing, if you catch my drift. So but I guess, is there anything else I wanted to say on the Robert Meyer Burnett thing? I don't know. It's just unfortunate. Unnecessary. Did notice on his live stream today, I was at work, so I didn't catch it till I got home. So I wasn't able to be in the chat. But just seeing the chat replay go by, I noticed he was getting a lot of real hefty donations. So one of those things where, you know, it's probably not going to hurt him, but if the people who are out to get him continue to try to stay on it because he's still on John Campea's show and he's still doing his own thing, I worry a little bit about that, but hopefully there's so much stuff going on that the mob will have already moved on to whatever the next flavor of the day kind of thing that they're going to be going after. So hopefully he can skirt out of this without having to hide in a bunker for several months before he can return and all that kind of shit. But he shouldn't have apologized. There's no point to it. What was the point of deleting your tweet, Rob? Did it do anything? Did it satisfy anyone? No, it didn't. So, well, since there's, as usual, nothing in the chat to talk about, I guess I'll thumb through Twitter for a few minutes, see if there's anything on here worth talking about or commenting on. That's an interesting tweet. Someone named Tarev Anime. Remember all the conservatives protesting and some idiot would show up with a Nazi flag or something and suddenly the entire group got called Nazis despite denouncing them. But here they aren't even trying to say the violent rioters aren't part of them. I guess there's a bit of a point there, but as I like to keep saying, there's a blurred line between protests and riots, with a couple of exceptions. But the vast bulk of the time, riots start off as protests. They're just protests that derailed over one reason or another at some point. This is not to excuse the fact that there are Antifa types and opportunistic criminals and just dumb youthful kids who don't really just know better, just beyond the fact that they've spent their entire life being told how they got to tear the system down, and now seems to be their opportunity to do so, even though they're blind to the consequences of exactly what they're proposing to do. So I don't know. I don't think it necessarily is quite the same. Now, albeit though, the people who would try to denounce an entire protest or rally because one person shows up with a Nazi flag, that's also ridiculous. So I don't know. I'd say no to both sides. I wish you could see this image. It's a decent meme. 3 images of a guy, or 2 images of one guy, and then a different little character. But my small shop I just opened was looted and destroyed. I don't have the money to recoup my losses. My savings are gone now. Please, my kids are starving. The second dude, I lost my job because the store I worked at was looted and destroyed. No one else is hiring. Please, my kids are starving. And the last dude, laughed my ass off. Stop being selfish. Stuff cannot be replaced. Stuff can be replaced. Lives cannot. We need justice, and that means burning your store because reasons. Razor fist. Kangaroo courts and extrajudicial executions by a slavering mob are not justice. Push into the suburbs, and that's exactly what you'll get from the residents. Then we'll see how just you find it all to be. Okay. Maybe trying to browse Twitter for things to comment on isn't the best way to fill time. So, never mind. Screw that. It's boring anyway. All right. So, talked about Meyer Burnett. I guess there's really not much else to say on that. So, before I leave off, since we're in the apocalypse, on my Twitter, which if you feel like following, it's at KWaspinator. I like to post in the middle of the night, since I've been using Twitter again, just random music videos off YouTube, links to them under the hashtag apocalypse music. So here's a couple of albums that I think are highly appropriate for the overall zeitgeist going on at the moment. The first one I would like to recommend is The Industrialist by Fear Factory. One of their later year albums. I want to say it's like maybe 3 albums back since it came out. I was living in Colorado still when it came out. So, but it's a pretty cool one. Relatively short. It's only got like 8 tracks on it. Difference Engine in particular. If you're just only going to listen to one track off of it, just for sample purposes, go with Difference Engine by Fear Factory. You can find it on YouTube. I mean, just the whole "We are nothing to the system" tagline of the chorus, I mean, should speak for itself as to why that song and that album are really appropriate for the times we're in. And the second one I would recommend is Nation by Sepultura. This is a album from the Derek Green era of Sepultura, and I know it might be controversial, but I kind of in some ways prefer Derek Green Sepultura over Max Cavalera Sepultura. Soulfly, which is Max Cavalera's current band, I consider to be my favorite band of all time. But for some reason, I've learned to like Derek Green's take at Sepultura. It's a little bit different. It's a little easier to understand the lyrics because of how he does his screamy, growly thing. But Nation is full of a bunch of political messages, obviously by the name, and especially the track Politrix. Worth a good listen right about now. I'll probably post them on my Twitter later or something tonight. So I guess that's about it for this episode of Thunderdome Tonight. One of these days, I might hopefully get enough viewers at once that someone will put something down here in the chat, a question, or maybe just some sort of statement I can at least bounce of so I don't just have to sit here and try to make up things to talk about. I'm still getting used to the whole live streaming thing, so whatever. Stay waspinated, folks, and be safe out there.